Mission Control Houston. Good morning. Today is Sunday, July 15th, 2018. We're live here inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room, awaiting the release of the Cygnus cargo vehicle for the Northrop Grumman CRS-9 mission. You can see the Cygnus currently poised in its release position at the end of the station's robotic arm, sitting just over 15 meters away from the International Space Station. Space station itself flying 256 statute miles over the North Pacific just south of the Gulf of Alaska, about to cross over the border of the United States, the western border of Washington right now. Inside is over 6,600 pounds, or just over 2 tons, of trash. Volumetrically, the vehicle itself is pretty full. We're looking at a release time right now on track for 7:35 a.m. Central Time release. Cygnus was uninstalled earlier this morning, just around 5:20 a.m. Central Time, and maneuvered by ground controllers into its release position just 15 meters away from the station. In the cupola workstation right now is ESA astronaut, European Space Agency astronaut, Alexander Gerst. He's being backed up right now by Serena Auñón-Chancellor. Currently in the cupola workstation on board the International Space Station, it'll be Gerst that sends the command for release, and they'll be monitoring the vehicle from the vantage point of the station as it says farewell for after its 52-day stay aboard the orbiting complex. Station's still in an orbital nighttime. You can see the sun from an orbital sunrise. It'll start to get brighter right before we hit handover of communications, as you're seeing right now. Now back inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room here in Houston, Texas at the Johnson Space Center. Currently, the team is about to conduct a go, no-go poll, the final step before it's ready for release, as the window begins to open here in the next few minutes. The team here, Orbit 1, is led by Flight Director Judd Freeling, you see in the foreground of your screen. Behind him are the two Capcoms for today, Cindy Kester and Tamara York. They'll be the ones communicating with the astronauts, Alexander Gerst and Serena Auñón-Chancellor, currently aboard the International Space Station, waiting for the final go, no-go poll and the yes to actually send the release to release the vehicle today.
Go ahead on 2.
We have completed our ground commanding. Please prepare for release for step 1.5 and 1.320. The release window opens at 12:20 GMT and closes at 13:07 GMT. Let us know when you've completed your review and briefing.
Copy release window from 12:20 GMT to 13:07 GMT, and we are proceeding with step 1.5.
Good readback on the window. Understand you're in step 1.5.
That was Capcom Cindy Kester here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room. You were hearing Serena Auñón-Chancellor on those loops, verifying the commands. Seems like everything is go. They're about to begin their window to actually signify the available time that they have to release the vehicle today. That window opens at 7:20 a.m. Central Time, giving them about 15 minutes before everything is set, and they actually send the command for release. Again, we are currently scheduled on time for that 7:35 a.m. Central Time release. Serena Auñón-Chancellor looking at this view right now. This is the Cuckoo workstation, gives them telemetry of the vehicle. Of course, in the cupola, they have a very nice view of Cygnus poised just outside of the cupola workstation from the windows, but this view gives them the telemetry. At the bottom right, you can see that VV to ISS number. That's 15 meters, currently poised away from the space station. Range rate is 0. Once it's released, you'll see that rate go up just a bit, and it'll move faster away from the space station.
Copy, thanks. Understand you're rebooting the SSC.
So the astronaut's currently going through the procedures to get the vehicle ready for release on time today. Of course, here in the room, Judd Freeling leading the team, Sydney, Kester, and Temery. You're communicating with the crew aboard the space station. VVO today is Thomas Castleberry. He is the visiting vehicle officer communicating with the flight control teams over in Dulles, Virginia. That's the Northrop Grumman flight control teams led by Ken Peake over in Virginia today. Of course, we're in the middle of joint operations right now to begin the release. We got space station flight controllers monitoring the space station systems, and the good folks over at Dulles monitoring the Cygnus vehicle. Once it's released today, there'll be a couple milestones as it drifts away from the space station, first crossing the keep out sphere, and then the approach ellipsoid. These are markers that are sort of invisible lines around the space station that are monitored by the flight control teams here and in Dulles. Once it crosses that approach ellipsoid just about a kilometer away from the space station, that'll end joint operations for today, and we'll wrap up our coverage as the Cygnus vehicle is handed over, the responsibility for the vehicle is handed over to the Northrop Grumman flight controllers in Virginia. Once the vehicle crosses that sphere and the NASA flight controllers are hands-off for the rest of the operations, that is not the end of the mission for Cygnus. It'll still remain in orbit for about 2 weeks. Immediately after crossing the approach ellipsoid, the Dulles flight controllers will take over to move the Cygnus vehicle from 1 kilometer away to about 45 kilometers away. In that position, it'll be behind and above the International Space Station in a good distance away from the station, safely away, to deploy a series of CubeSats. There'll be 6 CubeSats deployed, 4 lemur satellites and 2 aerocubes that will be deployed from the externally mounted NanoRacks CubeSat deployer. From this view, you can sort of make it out. You can see the ultraflex solar arrays, the gold-looking circular objects that provide power to the vehicle. Behind it and at the bottom, you can just make out a white object that is the deployer. They'll be deployed 2 at a time in 3 separate increments, several hours away from each other, and that'll happen later today and a little bit into the course of tomorrow. Deployment of those satellites will not be covered on NASA TV.
We copy all.
Just about 12 minutes from the planned release of the Cygnus vehicle today. Of course, this is the 52 days aboard the International Space Station after its launch 2 months ago. At 3:44 a.m. Central Time on Monday, May 21st, the Cygnus vehicle launched on top of a Northrop Grumman Antares 230 rocket from Pad 0A at the Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia. It took just under 3 days for the Cygnus to arrive to the station. On it was 7,400 pounds of food, supplies, and experiments delivered to the International Space Station. It arrived on May 24th, was captured at 4:26 a.m. Central Time by Scott Tingle, who has since left the station, backed up by Ricky Arnold, currently aboard the station. After its capture, it was later berthed to the station 7:13 a.m. Central Time and has remained there on the station's Node 1 Unity module on the Earth-facing port ever since. 52 days later, now currently in its release position, about to complete its journey to the International Space Station, providing scientific experiments that the crew have been working on since and will continue to work on through the rest of their increment. Cygnus, not the only vehicle aboard. You can see just there in this view the SpaceX Dragon on its 15th cargo resupply mission, currently docked to the Harmony module at the forward end of the space station, also on the Earth-facing port. just under a week ago. A Progress vehicle carrying more supplies to the station arrived just about 6 days ago.
Houston Station on 2, Cygnus configuration checks complete. Crew is ready for release and departure.
Houston copies. Stand by for release.
Sorry, say again, Cindy?
Serena, I originally told you to stand by for release. How I can now give you the go for Cygnus release on time at 12:35, steps 2 through 4 in 1.320. The release window closes at 13:07 GMT.
Copy. We are go for an on-time Cygnus release at 12:35. Steps 2 through 4, 1.320. Window closes at 13:07.
Good readback.
So again, that was Serena Auñón-Chancellor aboard the International Space Station talking to the Capcom Cindy Kester here in the room, confirming that the Cygnus is indeed go for release on time, 7:35 a.m. Central Time. They have the go to release a little bit early, but we're still looking at that on-time marker. Of course, they just read off that there is still a sort of a just over 30-minute window, just in case they needed a little bit extra time, but everything's so far looking good for that on-time release.
Step 2, the attitude control steps all the way up to the trigger.
Checking.
The International Space Station is currently 254 statute miles over the continental United States, just about to head over New Orleans into the Gulf of Mexico. Some final confirmation from Serena Auñón-Chancellor as she and Alexander Gerst, currently at the controls of the space station's robotic arm, waiting for that release on time at 7:35, going through their final checks. Again, 52 days on orbit, the International Space Station, delivering 7,400 pounds of supplies and scientific experiments to the International Space Station. Cygnus also achieved a milestone. The Northrop Grumman vehicle achieved the testing of the capability for reboosting the International Space Station on July 10th last week. Cygnus cargo ship fired its engines for about 50 seconds, raising the altitude of the space station to an average of 295 feet.
Station Houston on 2 for Serena. You are go to execute step 2 up to the trigger. You are no go for trigger.
Copy. We'll execute the steps in step 2 up to trigger, no go for trigger.
That's a good readback, and we're go for the trigger on time.
Copy. Go for trigger on time.
Capcom Cindy Kester confirming to Serena Auñón-Chancellor, currently backing up Alexander Gerst, who's at the controls of the station's robotic arm for release of the Cygnus. That step 2 is the release sequence. A series of commands have to be set. She's going to stop right before that trigger command, waiting for the on-time release of 7:35 a.m. Central Time. Just 3 minutes away from release, the vehicle, Northrop Grumman CRS-9 vehicle is named after the J.R. Thompson. The spacecraft was named after the distinguished leader in the aerospace industry who helped shape and strategize and directed the operations of a Northrop Grumman predecessor company called Orbital Sciences Corporation. He was there for 25 years. Before joining Orbital, though, Thompson was NASA's deputy administrator from 1989 to 1991. The vehicle is named in honor of him. He passed away November 7th, 2017. 52 days in orbit and 2 minutes away from release. Cygnus currently poised for an on-time release at 7:35 today. Now just 1 minute away from release, everything still looking good for that on-time release today.
And Houston Station, we are ready for trigger at 12:35.
Houston copies.
Series of commands right now. The snares are open and they're extending the carriage of the latching end effector to finally release the Cygnus vehicle today. Starting to see the separation of the vehicle from this Canada Arm 2. And at 7:37 a.m. today over southeast Colombia, 253 statute miles over the Earth, the NorthropGrummanCygnus vehicle on its CRS-9 mission has been released from the International Space Station. Confirm separation. You can see the arm backing away as well. Confirmation that the vehicle is steady right now. It's cleared 4.5 meters away from the station's robotic arm. Still poised just under 15 meters away from the station. Standing by for the departure burn to start moving away from the space station. Station's robotic arm is held 4 meters away. The departure burn has been executed. You'll start seeing the Cygnus start moving away from the space station. Confirmation from the crew that that burn has been commanded. Departure burn is underway. The Cygnus vehicle is currently accelerating away from the station.
Station Houston on 2, Cygnus departure burn is in progress. Continue to monitor the departure steps 2 and 3 in 1.602.
Copy. We'll continue to monitor step 2 and 3, 1.602.
Good readback.
With a good view, the astronauts from the cupola workstation will be able to monitor the Cygnus as it drifts away from the space station. They'll continue to monitor it as it crosses the keep-out sphere 200 meters away and the approach ellipsoid just about a kilometer away. Still about 2 minutes left in the burn. We're seeing a rate of about just over 0.5 meter per second and increasing, now 0.6 meters per second. Cygnus vehicle now about to cross 40 meters away from the station. About halfway through the departure burn, Cygnus continuing to accelerate, everything looking nominal so far. Station and Cygnus are 254 statute miles above the Earth, just crossing over Brazil right now. Everything looking nominal so far after a release time at 7:37 a.m. Central Time. Everything's still looking good. Cygnus crossing over 150 meters away from the space station.
Houston copies.
Confirmation that the departure burn is complete. Cygnus holding at just about 1.4 meters per second.
Step 5 in 1.320.
Stand by.
Serena Auñón-Chancellor and Alexander Gerst continuing to monitor the Cygnus as it continues to move away from the space station. Across the keep-out sphere, 200 meters away, 225 meters, and continuing to accelerate out.
Cygnus departure burn is complete. Safe SSRMS per step 5 in 1.320.
Copy, putting safety in place. So station on 2, SSRMS is safe, and that completes 1.320.
We see the same. Thank you.
Cygnus 300 meters away from the space station, well out of the keep-out sphere, holding at a rate of just over 1.4 meters per second after the successful completion of the departure burn. That single burn should carry it out of the keep-out sphere and the approach ellipsoid. Once it crosses over the approach ellipsoid just about a kilometer away, it'll cease joint operations between NASA flight control teams here in Houston and flight control teams at Northrop Grumman over in Dulles.
Station Houston on 2, Cygnus has exited the 200-meter keep-out sphere.
So we copy.
Good reads from Serena Auñón-Chancellor up on the station and Cindy Kester, Capcom here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Cygnus is confirmed beyond the 200-meter keep-out sphere, actually now 450 meters away and continuing to move away from the space station at a rate of just over 1.4 meters per second. Cygnus now over 500 meters away from the space station, about halfway to the approach ellipsoid. That'll cease joint operations between NASA flight controllers and Northrop Grumman flight controllers over in Dulles. From there, once again, Northrop Grumman will take over and move the Cygnus even further away from the space station, looking to position it later today just about 45 kilometers away from the space station. That'll put it into a good configuration and position to deploy a series of satellites. At the time, Cygnus will be behind and above the International Space Station, and 2 at a time over 3 separate occasions, several hours apart from one another. The Cygnus will use its external satellite deployer to send 2 satellites out at a time. There's 6 CubeSats, 4 of them are Lemur satellites, 2 of them are Aero Cubes. They'll deploy later today and throughout the course of a little bit of tomorrow. Once again, that coverage will not be provided on NASA TV. After the deployment, the Cygnus will remain in orbit for about 2 weeks. Then on July 20th, it's scheduled to initiate its final re-entry departure burn, and that'll send it into the atmosphere to burn up over the Pacific Ocean, again with 6,600 pounds, over 6,600 pounds of trash on board. Flight controllers and astronauts continuing to monitor a nominal track as Cygnus is moving away from the International Space Station. Now 680 meters away from the space station.
Houston Station on 2.
Go ahead on 2, Serena.
So Alex and I just wanted to tell you that it was really cool watching Cygnus depart. Almost a little surreal to watch a cargo vehicle like that depart the station and then to see it from a distance and just think this was a normal day at the office.
I can only imagine, Serena, the views were pretty spectacular down here, so they must have been even more spectacular up there.
They definitely were, almost difficult to describe.
Serena Auñón-Chancellor now aboard the International Space Station right next to Alexander Gerst. They had a great view of the Northrop Grumman Cygnus vehicle as it departed the station at 7:37 a.m. Central Time today. The station and Cygnus were 253 statute miles above the Earth. The station was positioned just above the southeast border of Colombia at the time. Station now east off the coast of Brazil and Uruguay over the South Atlantic Ocean, 258 statute miles. Cygnus at this time is 850 meters away from the station. Getting a good wave from Serena as she was able to witness a beautiful view of Cygnus departing. Of course, we're still under joint operations with NASA teams here and Northrop Grumman teams over in Dulles, Virginia at the Flight Control Center there. There's the team monitoring the vehicle as it moves towards the approach ellipsoid, just about a kilometer away. Cygnus over 900 meters away from the space station now. Good reports from flight controllers and, of course, from the astronauts aboard the station that everything's still looking nominal. A good view of the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Today the team is led by Flight Director Judd Freeling. You are hearing Capcom Sydney Kester right next to another Capcom Tamara York communicating with the astronauts aboard the International Space Station who were providing the lovely description of their views of the Cygnus as it departed today. VVO Thomas Castleberry is communicating with the teams over in Dulles, Virginia, and the Northrop Grumman flight control teams. Cygnus now over 1,000 meters away from the station, just over a kilometer. It still has just under 4 minutes until it successfully crosses that approach ellipsoid sphere, the invisible sphere around the International Space Station to cease joint operations.
Station 12 for SS Hermes.
Go ahead, Alex.
And you just want to make sure I see the arm is not safe right now. Did you guys take it on a safety?
That's affirmative, Alex. We're maneuvering the arm right now.
Okay, just checking.
That was Alexander Gerst, European Space Agency astronaut who actually sent the command to release the Cygnus vehicle today. He was working alongside Serena Auñón-Chancellor, NASA astronaut, who was providing the commentary of Cygnus as it was departing from the station. Cygnus, now over 1,100 meters away from the space station, still has about 2 minutes left until it crosses the approach ellipsoid. But in the meantime, the job of the astronauts is complete. They were sent the command from the station's robotic arm to release Cygnus, and then now are currently tracking its progress and making sure that it is successfully departing from the station and through that approach ellipsoid. In the meantime, robotics officers have taken over control of the station's robotic arm, and they'll continue to work on their end while the astronauts can focus on the Cygnus departure. Cygnus is 1,200 meters away from the space station, just under 1 minute until it crosses the approach ellipsoid. Cygnus about to cross 1,300 meters away from the space station. Just a few more seconds until we cross the approach ellipsoid.
Station Houston on 2 for Cygnus.
Right on 2.
Cygnus has exited the approach ellipsoid. This is going to be our last play-in status on the Cygnus vehicle to you guys today. Big thanks and congratulations to everyone on ISS and everyone down here on the ground who made this mission a success.
Cindy, thank you so much. We feel the same. Tremendous mission for Cygnus up here, and I'll definitely let Alex say a few words also.
Thanks, everybody. Also from my side, it was a pleasure to work with you guys. It's, as always, great to have a spacecraft operating, coming to station, going away, and we acknowledge that even though we did this so many times now, this is still a great engineering feature that all of you guys made happen down there, and I mean, we really appreciate all the work that went into this. Without this, operating a space station would simply not be possible.
Thank you, Alex. Great words from both you and Serena. You've got some smiling faces down here in Houston, I know over in Dulles as well, and at our partner centers across the world. Thanks so much.
Hey, and Cindy, do we still have that shutter constraint in the cupola?
Checking. Serena, the constraint is still in place. However, you can open it for situational awareness if required.
See that, I will open it occasionally to make sure I am still on board ISS. Big picture essay.
You got some laughs down here. I think that sounds like a great plan.
So a successful completion of the Cygnus mission. It crossed the approach ellipsoid at 7:58 a.m. Central Time today and ceased joint operations between NASA and Northrop Grumman. Northrop Grumman now taking over for the mission.
The winter and Earth was gone. That gave us a fright.
I can only imagine. Hopefully you figured out you weren't too far away.
Yeah, we figured you guys turned Earth for us overnight. Pretty impressive, actually.
Hey, we work pretty hard down here.
Must have Chuck Norris working for you.
So a lot of smiling faces here in Mission Control Houston, as well as the Northrop Grumman Flight Control Team over in Dulles, Virginia. It was a great mission, and that's why they're exchanging such kind words now. Everything went perfectly according to plan. Of course, the Cygnus was released from the station at 7:37 a.m. Central Time today. Station was 253 statute miles above the southeastern border of Colombia. Now it's back to the normal day for the astronauts. They don't have much planned for the rest of their day until they continue a normal workday tomorrow. On board was 6,600 pounds or over 2 tons of trash inside the Cygnus. Volumetrically, it was pretty full. Cygnus is over 1,700 meters away from the space station, and it'll continue to move away to about 45 kilometers away to deploy the satellites. That'll be controlled over at the Dulles Flight Control Room by the Northrop Grumman teams for the release of those 6 CubeSats. Of course, that will not be provided by that coverage will not be provided by NASA TV, nor the re-entry of Cygnus later this month. At July 30th, it's planned to initiate its final burn to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere and burn up over the Pacific Ocean with the 6,600 pounds of trash inside. 52 successful days aboard the International Space Station, and some great words from the astronauts. The Cygnus vehicle and Northrop Grumman have completed their mission aboard the International Space Station and will continue to remain in orbit for 2 weeks until its demise over the Pacific Ocean. For us here in Mission Control in the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, that's it for us. We'll hand it over to the flight control teams over in Dulles, Virginia for the remainder of the mission. This is Mission Control Houston.